We have a plethora of situations taking place all in our country and abroad, actually. But there are a lot of rumors too. Let's get some sobriety, shall we? Because many of you are talking without naming what you're worried about or what you're excited about, right? Well, let me share this with you. All of us know that our Father's kingdom is coming, correct? All of us do. We know that the kingdom of God is being established in the earth. We know that the kingdoms of this world are going to be handed over. The saints will be empowered to possess all the kingdoms of this earth. Are you guys aware of this? You can find that all throughout the Bible. Yes, that you will possess all the kingdoms of the earth. They're going to belong to the ones who serve the Lord. You know that Jesus is coming here. You know this. But ultimately, that his kingdom is going to be established. And then, after the 1,000-year reign, a great judgment will take place. The second death will take place. Satan and all of his minions will be bound forever. We'll never have to deal with that again. We know that prior to the Father's kingdom, our Lord's kingdom being set up, he has been crowned king of it. Prior to it being set up, it is within you. It exists within you. It's not on the earth. No one says, here it is, or there it is. But the kingdom of God is within you. Because the kingdom of God is within you. Because it's inside of you. Then inside of you is an answer to a great many things. And what is inside of you? The Spirit, the born-again Spirit. The born-again Spirit occupies within you. That is the Spirit of newness that God sends because you become one of his through his Son, through acceptance of his Son. Some of you have born-again spirits, but you're still in a fight with the old. Your spirit is born again. You're spiritually. You do not desire what you see in the world. By way of your flesh, your responses, your emotions, what you want, the discomforts you may feel, this, that, and the other. You tend to put things in a different light. You tend to fight for a different reason, but I know you're winning by way of that newness of spirit that the Lord has given all of us who trust in him, who follow him, who attempt to do what we can do to obey him. With that newness of spirit, our truth is evident. We're going to go over some of those truths so that you won't fall or be gullible to these things that happen in the world. I mean, when you were young in the Lord, you were fooled by many things, weren't you? If you were never fooled, you would have never sinned. You guys see how that works? You thought you had to do what you did. You believed that doing what you did was negligible regarding harm. You did not think that it warranted death. And in some cases you did, but the desire was so strong you didn't care. So all of us have been fooled, but we've been fooled for a reason. Anybody know why? Once you're fooled by darkness, you know what darkness looks like. You know how it forms. You know what the end result is. You know how you feel. And then when you grow, that same darkness can never overtake you again because you can see it. Once you can see that darkness, then you can be sent back to those who are among that darkness and indeed believing in the darkness. Some of you face that even tonight. You'll talk to people, this popped up in the chat room, and it seems like they don't hear a word you have to say. Well, they're in darkness. Do you really expect them to comprehend everything you're saying and acknowledge it? Of course not. They heard what you said, though. It went beyond their natural hearing, straight into them, especially if it's from the Lord. Good advice from the Word. They heard. But they have to be fooled, too. They often think that darkness is right until they're proven wrong. When they're proven wrong, they fall, and some fall pretty hard. But They know what that enemy looks like. See, when you know what the enemy looks like, when you know the signs that take place prior to that great fall, you know what to avoid, what not to do. And that's actually teachable information. That means you have wisdom. You see how that works? So everybody is going to gain wisdom, which means what? You had to fall in your times past. You know, Israel did the same thing. They fell. You know, the Lord finally disclosed why they kept falling. And then he disclosed his method of correction. And then he told us, you know, it's so funny because people read in the Bible, they say, well, they weren't corrected when they went to Babylon. If God is all-knowing and all-powerful, why did he not correct them in Babylon? Well, he did. Here's the way, that's called a vessel of usage. Some to honor, some to dishonor. How so, you ask? I'm glad you did. When Israel fell, right? When they fell and were exiled in the book of Jeremiah, and they were exiled to Babylon, that was bad, but they wrote about it. When they went into Babylon, right, and God likened them to the daughter of Babylon, that was twice as bad, but we read about it. And when they found out about the darkness, and when they went back to their homeland, and they were further filtered, and then dispersed yet again, that was horrible, but we can read about it. And when Jesus came and he began to reunite the nation of Israel, beginning with the kingdom of God, beginning with salvation and the kingdom of God, from among a mess, that was a mess, that was so terrible it looked like there was no control over it, but we read about it. And through all that reading, you gain wisdom because you are shown the signs, and then what the enemy looks like from your reading. So God took a vessel, and even while it was falling, God made it purposeful, didn't he? Because if we didn't have the story of Israel, if we didn't know about how many times it fell, if we did not know about their rebellion and their correction, if we didn't know that, how then could we have hope that we could be fully delivered? How could we have a hope for a nation who is in a fallen state, really? How could we have hope? Because we've seen that type darkness before. Where did we see it? We didn't live through it, no. But those of old documented what happened to them. And because we can read it, we can gain 30 years of wisdom with a simple 20-minute reading. Isn't that awesome? That means nothing the disciples did and nothing the nations did were for nothing, because they are remembered. They are studied. We use them in our learning, and we see what the enemy looks like and what he tries and what he eventually does. And we see how the Lord delivers, and that is what it bolsters our faith. God delivered all of us to the present day, didn't he? I should be dead 20 times over, but I'm not. You likely should be dead 20 times over, but you're not. Why are you not dead? I'll tell you why. Because all the attempts of the enemy failed. Ta-da! All of them. Not some, every single last one of them. Because if he had his way, he would have killed you a long time ago. Because now you speak against him. See, even the people that speak against him for 5 minutes and then they start speaking for him for months, they still speak that little 5-minute interval, that time interval, against him, which is enough to do damage to him. Huh? How wonderful is that? No wonder all things work together for the good. You guys know the rest of them that love the Lord. Those who are called to his purpose and seek those things, walk after the Spirit, not after the flesh, seeking those things of Spirit, not of the flesh. So everything in their life works out. Well, how can everything work out unless everything is purposed? How can everything work out, meaning being used for the good of you? Easy. All of it was purposed. You're walking the will of God. Whether you obey Christ or not, right? This is our Father's story. He wrote about every single character. He wrote about every single happening. And whether you are on the side of light or darkness, you're in our Father's story. Isn't that awesome? And he knows his own story. Oh, yes, he does. And if that is the case, then even right now, things are not out of control. We're just allowing people to convince us things are out of control. I noticed that people in protest supposedly against protest, the night it began, and I did talk about chatter. I did discuss with you guys that chatter was high. No wonder they had limited people on the police force. And the person that committed suicide is a very well-known person. Certainly in my circle. This person felt like they failed their nation. They did. You think it would be nefarious or something like that if somebody came up and killed him. Nobody came up and killed him. That's the only point I'll give. Because, listen, the same mindset is on the same people that broke into the Capitol. Do you not know? They feel they have no country. Sometimes you have to look beyond flesh to see the truth. When an adult is yelling, or when they're displaying severe anger, it's actually a cry. A cry to say, listen to me. Someone hear me. See, it's based on what they believe. It's not necessarily based on what's real and what's not. It's based on what they believe. Now, imagine that. A guy who knows for a fact certain people were there and I can identify their faces. I know what groups they belong to. There's no way in the world I should be supporting any of those people. I don't support them, but I'm just telling you what the deal is. They believe something. And they're fighting for that belief. They are. So how do you handle that? Because their intention was never to protest. It wasn't. Which is what I was trying to tell you guys some days prior. It wasn't. How do you handle that? Our leadership, they can no longer quarrel. Isn't that just like a family? You can no longer quarrel. Because see, right now the story is half the government is corrupt and the other half is not. Isn't that the story on the street? That's the word on the street. Half of it's corrupted, the other half is not. But you underestimate some of the Q documents. You underestimate them. There are a countless number of documents. There are strategic videos. There are lots of top-notch folks involved who trust the word of another. There are hinting videos put out there, hinting stories everywhere that demonstrate one of the core belief systems of Q, which means our government is past corrupted, and that people of power are doing things that no human being should ever do to another human being. This is what they believe. Now, if you believe that, you too would have ran into the Capitol building. You really would have. So it's based on what they believe. Just like a Muslim believes in the Muslim religion, they believe in the Nation of Islam. Right? So, if by way of their faith, if they believe that they're going directly to heaven, if they blow themselves up and take as many of us away as they can, or infidels, take us away. If they believe that, you can't fight that. That's a losing battle. How do you deal with it, though? You cannot deal with that with common things. That takes supernatural intervention, and it takes leadership never to quarrel. There's no way I would waste time going through a corrupted legal system either, because if the government is corrupted, so is the legal system. Because the same people who denied all those cases to turn over Georgia, Pennsylvania, those said states, those same judges, if I believed in the narrative, would also be corrupted. Therefore, I couldn't waste my time with the courts. Why is that not the case? Folks, I'm just asking you to hear me for a minute. Why would anybody attempt to do anything legally when they know the system is corrupted all the way to the top? Why? Why would they waste time doing anything legal? Is it the people? No, support of the people is already had. And we already know that the majority of people are not going to go with any one person, but they will pick and choose. They'll always have one side loyal, one side not. But why wait and do anything through legal avenues? I'll tell you why that's not the case at all. See, what's happening is nothing that has surfaced. If somebody knew that a person was talking about the actual plan, they would shut them up immediately. Do you know why? Because the plan would no longer work. If there was an open door in the world, and that was an open door to a very safe facility, but they wanted to keep that open door a secret, nobody could ever talk about that open door. You could talk about underground facilities, you could talk about general locations, but you can never talk about that door. Because if you ever talk about that door, it is no longer a secure place. Everybody would show up there. Everybody would want in. Everybody would demand to see everything that tax dollars have been spending. Thus, the open door would be torn off the hinges, and it would no longer be the facility they meant it to be. So I'm telling you this to let you know, things that are kept secretive have never been let out. But they will let out diversions, and they will feed the mindset of what people believe in. Folks, you're going to listen to me. They will feed the mindset of what people actually believe in. These are psychological operations and anti-psychological operations that people fall for all the time. So what is it they really want? You need to think in terms of Satan and your father. What does Satan want from you according to the word of truth that was given to mankind, solidified by our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, carried by the disciples, fought for to get to us, and now we can read it? What does Satan really want? What does he really want? He's not trying to be correct in everybody's eyes. That's not what he wants. What does he want? He wants your unconditional servitude. You got to stay with me on this. He wants you to serve him. He wants you to serve him, and he wants you to choose to serve him, because that's called worship. When you choose to serve something, when it's your choice, it can never be forced, or it's not worship. You can't force a person to worship. A person, listen, that's just like church. A lot of people say, hey, now we're going to worship. No. Either a person came to the door in worship, or they did not. Either way, you cannot command worship, because worship is authentic from the internal portions of a person, of which no man can command. It must be something a person gives. If they are forced to do it, it's false. It's not real. But if you enter into a building and you're full of thanks, and you acknowledge that from coming from Yeshua, then you're worshiping. Man cannot command worship. They can put on a show, but they cannot command worship. Worship is something internal that must be given by choice by the individual, or it is not worship. If you can understand that, then you'll understand the propaganda of this world and what it's doing. For you to be forced to do something is called slavery. For you to desire to serve something is called worship. When it's your go-to source, now you're in worship of it. When you make up your mind to be thankful for it, to serve it, to protect it, to die for it, when you do this in your heart of hearts, then you're in worship. But it must always be given. It can never be forced. You can't trick somebody into doing it, because it has to be authentic. If it's not authentic, it's not worship. In the Bible, when they worshiped the beast, believe me, it was authentic. You see a great deal of loyalty right now, don't you? I want you to ask yourself, what would make one man kill another over? Why would you kill another person? For what reason? Folks, I'm here to talk to you about what's real. My. You know what the Lord said about Caesar's money? Should we go pay taxes or not? Whose face is on that coin? Caesar's. Well, then render to Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God what is God's. It tells you what our Lord was interested in and what he was not interested in. It lets you know what's part of the kingdom and what's not part of the kingdom. Let me ask you this. If the same men who printed your currency wanted that currency back that they really never gave you, why would you get upset? Why? Isn't that a funny thought? If somebody printed a business card and you had 50 business cards, but they came back and they said, well, I need 10 of my business cards back, why would you ever have a problem? I'll tell you why. Because you put value on those business cards. And if those business cards empower you, you don't want to lose that power. It is the Lord that sustains you. But I tell you now that people fight over power. There is no honor in that. You ever think of that? You ever break something down in simple terms and just look at it? That's what happens when you're not steeped into the system of things. You take a step back and you see things for what they are. And these are the days when the Lord opens up our eyes, that we may see something as it really is. Is the currency changing? Is America kicked out of the new exchange system? They were kicked out in 2015 when the software was finished. The dollar had long since lost its value. It's being propped up. People trust in that dollar too much. Put a man's face on one side and in God we trust on the other. In what God? The person's face on the dollar bill. Whose bright idea was that? That's Templar manipulation is what that is. And that began well long before Germany was Germany. Long before Saudi Arabia was Saudi Arabia. Long before America was America. That took place. You see, in Rome, do you not know what the inscription that Rome had on their coins? And we do the same thing with a person's face. But why? Why did we put a person's face on there? Because you don't know this. In Rome, the Caesar was to be addressed as God. Did you know that? So everybody was to call Caesar. Caesar. Why would somebody call Caesar Caesar? Huh? They were to refer to him as a god. Do you know that? Where'd they get that from? They got that from Egypt. That's why in the Bible it says, Egypt, your gods. Right? But the pharaohs were known as the Godhead. How many of you knew that? Maybe you didn't know that. So they were to be worshipped, right, as gods. Originally from the fallen, but they were to be, served as gods. And they indeed lived their lives that way, which is why they had dynasties to take over power in Egypt. And they wielded strange things. In other words, they had strange practices like dentistry, heart surgery, brain surgery. Do you know the Egyptians did all of this? Of course they did. They built weird things. But this nation took the ideologies of Egypt and Rome and Greece and came up with an experiment called democracy. In the experiment, they were seeing if all peoples could live together under one banner, yet have different cultures. It blew up from the onset. It really did. Defiled from its beginnings. And now it's just like God said it would be. He said in the book of Jeremiah, there is no one that tells truth. All are given to covetousness. Lord have mercy. From the person to the priest, all are given to covetousness. What they do, and their primary thought is to gain money out of it. And everybody right now, that's what they're working for, money. Except for the true people, true ministers, who don't work for money. They're doing what they do for the sake of the souls of men. Well, Satan wants to put an end to it. He wants your servitude. He wants your voluntary servitude. He wants your worship. In the Bible, it says the world worshipped the dragon, which gave power to the beast, and they worshipped the beast. I'll say that again. In the Bible, it says the world worshipped the dragon. Now, thought about something. If everybody on earth was worshiping the dragon, then it's not by boundary, is it? And if it's not by boundary, it must be something common to all people. Something they would worship, something they would be empowered by, something that would be the answer for their lives. Money. See, if you have enough money, you don't need other folks' counsel. Come on, sober up now, because people go to school, people do what they do to be a professional at their job in the hopes of making a bigger paycheck. You don't work where you work so that you can make somebody else's life better, because if that were the case, you would never complain about your wages. You would contribute to the company. You may work for free. The Lord is the one that said he would do what he can do. And right now in America, you see the onset of something, but it's a little different than what you think. See, most of you are thinking, well, you know, and even based upon Q doctrine, I'll say, but a lot of folks are going to be rounded up and arrested who've been involved in high crimes against humanity, things like that. And some people are really lifted up by this, saying, yes, they're going to finally do it. But what if they did do something like that? If they arrested everybody who committed such a crime in the past, then what? I'll tell you what. Because we're governed by principalities and powers. Some other vessel would step into the spot where those people were, and a worse thing would take place. Because they don't know they're fighting a spiritual battle. And where one vessel is lost or confined, that spirit just jumps into somebody else. So you'd be fighting people for the rest of your life. You'd be trying to kick everybody out for the rest of your life. People have it in their heads because they're not thinking soberly that if you get rid of specific people, the problem goes away. That's not true. Are we not taught this in the Bible? You get rid of a person full of demons. The demons just go and inhabit somebody else. That puts you back at square one. Why do you think in every election we deal with the same problems? The same exact problems over and over again without a solution. Because every time it looks like something is about to break free or break loose, something else starts. Who out there can see patterns? Who can see, Professor John Nash, who wrote a beautiful formula. You could call that one an algorithm for sure. They wrote something very beautiful for economics. It's a very complicated process a mathematical equation that is just beautiful in concept. But he wrote this, and even it demonstrates a pattern. And by that pattern, economics is formed. But a pattern repeats itself. It never goes away. It only repeats. You put in different values, you get the same process. You get a outcome, and then it starts back over again. This is what the earth is, over and over and over again. But you're not of the world that you would do something over and over and over again, right? How crazy is this? Suppose, listen to me. I'm going to get your pulse on this before I go any further. How many of you would just love it if a person came up to you and say, you know what? I'm going to give you $10 million Friday. You say, oh, wow, that's great. You really believe the person. You say, that is great. Wow, and you start dreaming up what $10 million can do. Friday comes. You don't find the person. The weekend comes, you're highly distraught. Comes all the way back around to Monday. And Monday night, you see the guy again. He goes, listen, I'm sorry about last week, but this week, I'm going to give you $10 million. You're happy again. You believe it again. You're happy. Oh, yes. I'm going to plan everything out. The weekend hits. You can't find them. Monday rolls around. You're distraught. Monday rolls around. Monday afternoon, you see him. He says, buddy, I got held up. Because he shows up in the afternoon. Guess what you say? Oh, he showed up earlier. Normally, he shows up at midnight. This time, the afternoon, everything is different. Oh, I'm getting the $10 million. And then you're all happy. You plan out and everything, and Saturday comes and it's no one. You keep doing the same thing over and over again. Having hope in the same thing over and over again. And for what reason? Because someone presents to you what they're going to do for you. You agree to live in a yo-yo. Something that repeats over and over again. No progression, always hope. Isn't that what we do during elections? That was a heavy one, right? That was unfair. That was just simply unfair. But isn't that our mindset? Each election that comes down, that comes by, what do people say? Oh, yes, that person, they're going to do it this time. Another one pops up. Oh, yeah, now this person, they're going to get it done. Another one comes in. Oh, now, I know about the other ones, but this time, this is it. They're going to get this done. And they keep doing this over and over again. Then they eventually pass away and somebody else takes over the torch. Here we are again back in the world with the yo-yo syndrome. Patterns repeating themselves. And people cannot see the trap. How can people, listen, if one side really wanted to get the other, why haven't they done so already? And if everything is so corrupt, why take anything to court? If you know everything is corrupt, why in the world would you take it to court? Doesn't make good sense, right? It's the yo-yo syndrome. A yo-yo goes up and down and 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 up and down. It's fascinating at first, right? Until you find out that's what it does. It goes down and comes back up, down and comes back up, down and comes back up. You guys remember 2011? How many remember that? Before 2012, you remember? Because in 2009, 10, and 11, we had natural disasters. Everybody was convinced something was coming. I remember at that time people were talking about DHS. You guys remember the days of DHS? That became the big topic. Oh, they're coming to get your guns. They're coming to get it tonight. They're coming to get it. How many times that happened? They never came. What did they do with the weapons? Anybody know? Anybody know? You remember the time they were doing accountability? They started rationing ammo. And they stopped manufacturers, or were trying to stop them from making the AR-15. You guys remember that? And right then and there, everybody swore. They said, listen, I have intelligence. This isn't an operation. This is for real. You remember that? That's what they said. They're coming to get you. Then, of course, people jumped on the internet and they said, I have from reputable sources that they're coming to get you. You remember that time? Because I remember I couldn't even speak half the time to people because they would ask that question. Were they coming to get our guns? That's all they wanted to know. And I kind of skipped all around it. You guys remember that? They don't want your guns. They need you to have your guns. Do you guys know after that where the ammo went? It went to reinforced armored vehicles, to police stations all around the U.S. It went to depots that are sitting near the highways for checkpoints. That's where the ammo went. That's where it went. And then something else happened. I don't know if you guys didn't keep track or what, but see, there's a problem in the U.S. right now. A big problem, a problem that people like me keep track of. We have to keep track of, because who else is going to keep track of it? But do you guys understand that the USA right now, we have lost accountability of stolen firearms. Do you know how many? Anybody? Anybody know how many firearms are missing? You know, if you start doing this state by state, I remember Texas is now at, 737? Then you have California's around 500 number. You have Georgia's at, I believe Georgia's like 200,000 or something like that. North Carolina's at like 28,000. Alabama's at 74,000. Give me round figures. Ohio is about 100,000 weapons are gone. Missouri is about another 113,000 weapons are gone. Washington is about, I believe, 60 or 70,000 weapons gone. Virginia is about the same number. All these weapons are missing from these places. California having the highest, Florida having the second highest. California's about 497,000 weapons are stolen. These are weapons that are still here in the country, but they're not in the hands of the owners. And the number is in the millions. You know how many millions? Anybody? How many millions? That's a lot of millions, right? I believe the number right now is a little over 400. What is it? No, I'm sorry, not 400. But if we combine this year with last year, it's going to be probably about 30, 40 million weapons not in circulation or stolen. The weapons that are missing, that's another story, because there are trillions of dollars in missing weapons in the USA. See, when you track weapons, you realize there are over 900 million weapons in the United States that are actually missing. Ooh, that's bad. When you start looking at the real numbers, you say, wait a minute, somebody out there has an arsenal. That is not the Army. That is not law enforcement. That is not the CIA. That is not one of these three-letter agencies, but they're in the streets. Well, how much is in the streets? Enough to arm just about everybody in the streets, plus some. That's a couple of weapons for everybody that lives in the U.S. right now. How about that? They're out there in the streets. Somewhere. See, when you start tracking things like this, you can't help but to think in different patterns than everybody else. Because somebody wrote tonight, they said, well, China is coming in to help. That was a plan. Actually, that was an actual plan a long time ago, just in case a civil war were to ever start in America. China would be bought in. There's no need for China. I can assure you they want everybody to have weapons. They want everybody to have weapons. Because a long time ago spoke about something that still stands today. This is called a hiccup. What you're going through now is a hiccup with lots of icing on it. And unfortunately, I'm going to have to wait until all this rhetoric kind of cools down before going into details in it. Why? Because somebody will take anything I said, add to it, take away, throw this in there and that in there, and all of a sudden it's a brand new story that I confirm somehow. Did you know that just about every single week they find a munitions plant? People are smart enough to make munitions. They even have plastic munitions. All these people who bought these 3D printers and everything else, they print everything. And there are replicated guns, ceramic, because they have ceramic 3D printers. They have the ammunition. They have the dimensions right. They have a tool for making just about everything out there. And people have started to manufacture their own things. Just like the gentleman that was caught. And he had, I believe he had something like 617 weapons in his house. Every single last one of them was fully loaded. Who needs that many weapons? But this guy had gone cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. There was another guy just like that in the news not too long ago. Remember, there was a guy in California who did this, and I believe his excuse was the aliens are coming to get him. He's got to get ready because they're coming. He had a lot of weapons, too. In fact, they seized quite a few weapons, but they also lose them. May lose them. Now, that being said, if there was a civilian uprising, I'm telling you right now that there are enough organized folks with the ammunition to back up everything. To help do what, though? To help one man kill another man. In the Bible, it said people will become betrayers. They would turn each other in to the point of death, which means if somebody knew if you were going to be turned in for doing something, but it would cost you your head, they're going to go ahead and do it. An absolute and utter loss of any care for their fellow man. That's what's happening in the earth. They don't care if they kill you or not. If you're in the way of their agenda, so be it. And I hope you guys pray for Mike Pence. You see why I requested prayer for that guy. His family is under threat. That's evil. That is outright evil. You know, somebody should take accountability for all the families that are threatened, for the congressional members' children who've been killed already in the last, well, I can't say that, but they've been killed. Now, somebody ought to be sympathetic to something. In the words I heard with my own ears, I do not believe the rhetoric I hear out there on the internet right now. I do not. I've heard something consistently with my own ear for quite some time now. And I just pray you guys don't fall for a great trick that's being played on everybody. It's only going to eat up your time, and then the hammer falls. I know a lot of people are talking about the Insurrection Act. Did he sign the Insurrection Act? What if he did? Then what? What's the next step, honestly? Anybody? What's the next step? To forcefully have that plan? Authorities have been changed as of yesterday. It's almost like command and control just went to a group who all the earthing point. Listen, when you talk to the military, you're just not going to pick up a phone and start calling people and say, hey, how you doing, buddy? I need you to get down to so-and-so. Senior commanders and everybody else, we need you back. You don't do that. You get on secure radios and you talk to people that way, right? They're in a network. All the keys to that network were transferred yesterday. They are no longer in the hands of those that would have been questionable. and their activities going forward. I'm just telling you what I know. They've been transferred effectively. Somebody said that they have all these, some of the ex-generals, and they're down there, they're going to have a tribunal, right? But they mentioned Colin Powell's bad name to mention, especially with me. Bad name to mention. Not a good name to mention. But they did anyway. And I'm telling you now, there's certain stories out there that people have added to emotionally because they're too emotional behind what's happening. You know what happens to newscasters when they get emotional? I've noticed that when people hear these small things, they're so quick to add stuff to it, which is why I have to reserve my major statements so that when things begin to fail of what people are talking about now, because here's what happens. Normally in an episode like this, people will start to see, because I said, wait a minute, that happened. I can't believe that happened. That happened, so this must happen next. And they'll start thinking along that line. Well, because of that, anything I say, they'll just point at me, make me an enemy over nothing anyway. They'll say, well, what he said is just not true. And they'll speak that way as though what they have is truth. And then when time passes, should my way be correct, they just go away. But guess what? The name sticks. The whatever they put on me, whatever they speak against me, when I'm involved in things like that, the feelings people develop against you, they stick. Not the information, not the facts, not the sobriety. It's the name against you that sticks. So I normally don't get into the middle of it because it doesn't do anything. Don't do anything. I would remind everybody here about Revelation, though, about the prophecies. That's where it's at. See, because God already said what's going to perplex man. You ready for this? While everybody's sitting up thinking about, what's being taken away and fighting and all this, that, and the other, I do remember in 2010 having a discussion. The Pink Lady was involved. And one of the Hadwins, we were talking about civil war. And back then I said, you know what they really want to do? While everybody else was talking about DHS and everything else, I said, no, they're not coming to take your guns. They're going to abandon you topside. Here's what I said. They're going to abandon you topside. You will not have governing forces up top. You will not have adequate law enforcement up top. And when this happens, they will have withdrawn most of the major people from the surface of the planet. In other words, you'll start seeing people you never knew before. You'll say, who are these people? See, because you can discern, they know this, you can discern the truth of a matter. You can discern if a person is absolutely fake or real. You can already discern that. Don't go off the information, because the information can simply tell you about a person's history as they have assumed it is. It cannot tell you what a person actually is on the inside. You have discernment to tell you what a person is on the inside, but many people override discernment through evidence, through favoritism, through being a respecter of persons, of which I am none. So I tend to see what's there. So I'm not fooled by somebody's presentation. I'm not fooled by what they're going for. I'm not fooled by what they appeal to people by. Just not fooled by that. Because I'm not fooled by that. Maybe that's why the Lord entrusts me to have been in certain places to see the unbelievable, to know about the unknowable, to arrange, to collect things, to collect and both arrange things, to make sure nobody has snooped in things. That means, say, for example, if a paper came from China or Russia, that was supposed to come to the USA through a secure channel. It does not go directly to a secure channel. It goes through checkpoints. Those checkpoints will run the code of that transmission. So if a page of text was sent, the computer will break down not only the pixels that you see, but the information behind the information you don't see, how it is packaged. Each packet, does it show a pattern with future packets or past packets, or any trended future packets, to see if there's a message involved packet length. I'll break it down to you. Here's how they send a message. They'll send you a book. In that book are characters marked very specially. They're heavier than the rest, they're called, which means they have a packet extra information in every area. It could be on a PDF, Word document, whatever the case is. Then they give you another one. Then they give you another one. Out of the first book, only 3 letters are good. And the first book is 500 pages. Out of the second book, which is 11,000 pages, only a paragraph is good. Out of the fifth, so on and so forth. And then you put the messages in there, the yeses or the nos. Out of all those messages, you read it through 3 dimensions, and you have the message. So you need all the messages first, so that you can read the whole message. How slick is that? By the way, a message is not paper. So it's easy to send 11,000 pages of real stuff, but embedded in that message is a portion of the real message. But only 1 letter, 2 letters per book. Anything like that comes to the U.S. It is scrutinized, taken apart, put back together, searched. Everything happens to it. You get to see it intact and broken apart. Anybody who sits there and does that, nothing escapes their eyes. That means you read everything everybody else is about to read. That's what it means. And you have to stay hush-hush about it. But here's the aggravating part. Suppose that was your job. You would be so annoyed because what you would do is see the truth and the facts. And you would know that the facts were inflamed among good people. It's very difficult to tell somebody that they're holding a half a truth because they won't know which half. They won't know which half. Anyway, when you see good people who believe in tampered messages, right? Who believe in the psychology of politics, it really annoys you because everybody knows you cannot say anything while they still believe. They must be proven wrong before you can utter the truth. I'll give you the truth. Hardly anything. Hardly anything, and I don't know what they're talking about now, but hardly anything on the web within the U.S. that they are discussing, especially when they have high emotions behind it, those things will not come to fruition because those things likely don't exist. What does exist is a problem with the people, not with the government. I know that people believe in Q, but listen to me. With evidence comes a conviction. With video comes a conviction. With letters comes a conviction. With entire servers comes a conviction. With computers come a conviction. Those are things that cannot be denied. You can handle that through people directly to the individuals as the government, but that will never be done. Do you know why? Do you know why? Because I know if I had somebody's laptop and all of them are key marked, you're not going to do something on that laptop that cannot be replayed, is what I'm saying. Things can be replayed internally and externally. So it's already authenticated. But if you have that, and you have what it leads back to, if the information be valid, there's no way I go through normal channels. There's just no way. Because if I had that concrete stuff on somebody, oh my goodness gracious. But what else can it be? What else can it be? Let me share this. All of them have dirt on each other. And that's what holds both sides back from coming forward too fast. Do you know that? All of them do. And because they do this, they change the field every single day. But I'll tell you that who held the power, who had that power has been surrendered. The power has been surrendered. But we're still going to have to deal with people for a long time. So let me share with you one thing that's very real. As time continues to go forward, you're going to notice important people missing. You will not really recognize some of the individuals that you see, and you will stop seeing leaders in current settings outside. You won't see that anymore. Why is that? Because the Bible teaches us that they know something is coming. See, hear me on this. What if the binary system is real? Despite what you call it, what if it's real? Well, if it's real, in all binary systems observed, the secondary sun is traveling at exponential rates, meaning yesterday it was going twice as slow as it is right now. As it gets closer to our sun, the faster it travels. The time will come upon you like you wouldn't believe. It accelerates as it comes closer. That means if you see it in the distance, it's already too late. Which means if you know this and you have performed the formulas for celestial mechanics, if you know this, you would desperately pour money into looking for it right now. Because when you see it, because it increases speed exponentially, once you see it, it's too late. That means there'd be an emphasis on getting off the planet, an emphasis on living underwater, wouldn't it? Go follow that money. Why in the world are we at odds internationally? Yet all the money is being spent on projects just like that. Satan is behind the whole thing. He is. And he's after your souls. He needs your voluntary observance. He does not care how he does it. He'll do it any way he can. He'll utilize anybody he can. If you think in those, and I just said that extra information to let you guys know that every time people are looking in one direction, they're bit by a snake from another direction. Trust me, it'll happen again. And when it happens again, then we can talk about some things. When it happens again. Tuesday, I kept typing that day, right? Better keep your eyes open Tuesday. You might want to do it. There's going to be some upset people Tuesday. I'm just telling you beforehand. They're going to be even more upset Saturday. They're going to be greatly upset because what's happening is a change in the people. Big time. Do you know in the Bible it says what the beast does? And the beast gets all the support of the people. No, I'm not likening the beast to anything in the U.S. right now. But I'm telling you something. The beast causes the people to do everything. It's funny how people become the mechanics of a machine or the mechanisms in a machine, and they don't know it's a machine. They're taught to be happy being a cylinder if they were a car engine. Others are taught to be happy being the radiator. Still others are taught to be happy to be a wire. Some are happy to be the battery. Each part brags on itself, and each part begins to brag on its own importance. But when one part breaks down, when one cylinder goes bad, nobody's worried about it until it begins to affect them. When the one cylinder goes bad, it puts an additional weight by way of inertia and forces. It puts weight on the other cylinders, They're not built to handle that weight, and they begin to break down, which causes extreme heat to build up in the radiator. It's not use to carrying that hot of a fluid, which overworks the fan. That fan going continuously overworks the electronics. The electronics are not used to those high tolerances, and so you have a massive system failure. For all that time, they were happy being the components until one of the components broke down, which affected all the rest. You know what they're going to do? They're going to keep putting their foot on the pedal, full throttle, until the engine blows. In other words, analyze what I said carefully. Did the person driving the car destroy the engine? No. In this case, the engine destroyed the engine. When the one part was hurt, they should have assisted the one part that was hurt so they can run smoothly. Nope. They kept following the demands of the one putting their foot on the pedal. And let's say that's by choice. Let's say you're indoctrinated, that when someone put their foot on the pedal, you feel you must respond. Then when it begins to blow, the one in the car discards the entire car, yet the engine continues to burn. The ones who drive the car, they're not fatigued like you. They're always thinking. They can see outside the engine compartment, and you cannot. They plan for things you couldn't possibly know. But they must keep you being active in the engine, or they cannot move. That part is so real. If you refuse to be the engine, they can go nowhere. Do you know that? So you're born to believe your role in the engine. And people are passionate about the engine. But the mistake they're making is the people they fight against are other portions of the same engine. When they begin to damage themselves, the whole vehicle's going to stop. It's going to burn. It's going to be overstressed. It's not meant to work that way. And all of them feel the consequences. But our Lord told us, before that takes place and it destroys the entire engine, he would come in and cut everything short. Didn't he? He said, because if he's different, there no flesh would be saved. Nobody would survive. How do we know that means nobody will survive? Because Jesus saves the soul, not the flesh. The flesh is non-redeemable. So for him to say no flesh would be saved, that means no flesh would have been spared. No living organism would have made it. Which gives you, it tells you something. If that happens then, it tells you what's about to take place now, doesn't it? If it got so bad, man against man, then it must start now. Man against man. It also implies it's not going to go away until God shortens the time. Do you see what it's telling you? What the real problem is? I submit to you right now, I saw the path of exposure of secrets. Do you really think, listen, if you were thinking the other side's full of criminals, right? I want you to think about this. Then why would you, nice and neatly, take your complaints to a judge to try and prove to a prisoner he's a bad person? Huh? Would you go to jail to prove that a person in jail is worthy of jail? I don't think I'd do that. What about you? If you know they're bad people, you need not prove it. You certainly can't go through normal channels. But what if they're not as bad as you think? And what if some of the proposed evidence somehow got mixed up with something else that others know very, very well? They ought to hunt for it. And then it was, kind of overly stated. Then you have a mess in your hands. Either way, it will begin. And it will continue until man consumes just about everything off the face of the earth. Until the Lord cuts time short and returns. People will be against people. This is going to be a people thing. The government has no power unless the people give it to the government. When will people know this? They don't have power. And because they also know that forcing your way in to do things is not going to work but provoke the other side. And to present evidence after you have committed such a forceful thing, that evidence is only going to be seen as a trick. To go that route is not going to work either. But we all know who's behind the whole thing, Satan. We all know that he pursues the remnant of the seed, God's seed. We all know that he will not stop in his quest because we can read his endeavors in Revelation all the way to the end, to the time he is bound. He is not rested. He will continue to do what he does. That takes a refocusing of the saints. I can assure you that many things will pass, but some things will not. I can really promise you that the snake will come through a passage no one is looking at. And that cannot be shared. Because if it's shared, how then is it going to work? If you knew where a snake was every single time, right, he couldn't bite you. But people are going to get bit this time, which means they don't know where the serpent is. They think they do, but they don't. And it will bite. But this time is for real. This is not 2011. This is not 2006. This is not 1999 going on to 2000. That's not what this is. This is not 9/11. No. This is people no longer accepting governmental powers. And it's beginning with the Republicans. But it will consume everything. I'll say that one more time. It's going to consume everything. How do I know this? Because the people in the world no longer believe what the government presents. And when they go to court and present any facts, if it were to ever become that way, they're not going to believe it anyway. All they're going to do is start blaming things on agendas and racism and all sorts of things. And they will continue to do this. See, for many years, I've seen people tangled up in this stuff. They go through the same process all the time. What the Lord is doing has to do with your deliverance and mine. And the number one thing he said he would do was what? He does not want us to carry around a lie. So what will he do? He'll cause us to see the lie. He'll cause us to see what happens when it fails us so that we will adopt absolute truth. You see how that works? That's what he said he would do. Anything that we hold in our hands or hold close to us that we believe in, The Lord said if it's false, he's going to show us what it really is. That means you're going to have to be close to it first. He's going to show us what it really is. It will fail us, not to condemn us, but to save our souls. That's what he said. It's to save our souls.